All right, folks, we're about ready to get going here. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Bowen Greenwood. I'm gonna be your MC for the day, and I just want to thank you all for coming out to stand up for our Second Amendment rights. This rally wouldn't have happened without you. You folks flooded in from all over the state and brought your own signs, and some people brought buses and vans. You are the people making this happen. So let's start the rally off with a quick invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance, and let's all bow our heads and pray. Father God, thank you. Thank you for these wonderful people who came to the rally today. Thank you that we live in a country where we're free to gather together, where we're free to pray together, and where we're free to stand up and speak out for our rights. Father, I pray that you would come and be amongst us, that you would bless this rally, and that you would bless each and every person here as they go forth afterwards. Thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
And now I'd like to ask our representative, Becky Beard, from the state legislature to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everybody. So now I just want to take a moment to introduce somebody who helped make this happen. He's my friend Brent Weber, who personally organized the march, who is just an ordinary Montanan who got fed up with the pro-gun control message coming out of the national media and decided, you know what, Montanans need to have their voices heard. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Brent Weber who got this whole thing started.
Wow, I didn't even know if we would make it to this day when I first started to plan the event. So number one, I wanted to tell every single one of you, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it. To Tim Ranival, to my buddy Bowen Greenwood, Ann, and all the folks that came down from Kalispell, thanks to everyone that traveled to this event to help pull it together. I can't tell you enough. Thank you so much for being here. I love every single one of you that's here today. Black, red, white, yellow, green. We are all one people in this state. Amen. More importantly, today is a great day in Montana, and we will be heard. We're blessed to live in a state that believes in individual rights to speak freely and express our opinions, and that's what we will do here today. With one of the smallest populations in the country, we will have one of the loudest voices today. We will let the country know that we are the heart of America. Our freedoms come first, and no one will infringe on our right to keep and bear arms. No one will tell us what to do in Montana, and our values will ring free today. We are freedom fighters, patriots, and we are the backbone of this country. This event is dedicated to every Montanan that has not had a voice in the national media. This event is dedicated to all the people that work on the farms across this state, to all the people that live on food stamps that can't afford food, to the 4 people that gave only $155 to pull this event together. This event is dedicated to the kids in Butte, Libby, and all of the small towns across this state. It's also dedicated to Heather Brenner, who told us that she couldn't make it here because she did not have enough oil for her truck to drive down here. Montanans dedicate this event to all the kids that did not walk out of school. To all the people that have not had a voice. To all the people holding signs that we see in our streets asking for money. To the forgotten veterans, to the people living in the projects and public housing, this event is being held for the small guy. This event has been pulled together to remind you that our right to protect ourselves from government tyranny is at the forefront of everything that we do in this state. And we will not have other states dictating gun laws for Montana. As I said, March for Our Guns raised less than $200 in donations for this event. But we will not be bought out of the gun debate. We as Montanans will rise up and prevail over big money that has tried to muzzle your voice. There were 200 to 300 students that walked out in some schools in this country, but there were still 700 students in those schools that did not get reported on. To those 700 students, your voice will be heard today, and this event will not leave you out of the national debate. Democracies are supposed to be ruled by the people, for the people. However, this country is headed more towards an oligarchy each day. As each day passes, we are controlled more and more by small groups of people that benefit the most. And we are not going to stand for that anymore. 10% of the people in this country make 50% of the income. 45 million people live in poverty. 42 million people are on food stamps. Over 500,000 people in this country are homeless. And many of these same people live in the streets. In times of social oppression, gun ownership is of utmost importance. Financial tyranny cannot be followed by an attempt to reduce our rights to protect ourselves, and we will not let it happen in Montana. We'll talk about gun rights today and the Montana way of living. We'll celebrate our right to keep and bear arms and to never let the government infringe on our freedoms that we cherish in this state. Today is about showing this country who Montana is, what we represent. We will be heard, and you will not be forgotten. God bless this state. Thank you for coming, and I'm going to turn it over to Bowen for the rest of the speeches. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Brent. That was a stem winder. And I am so glad that we have people like Brent and like our other speakers today who are willing to stand up and help us defend our rights. Ladies and gentlemen, one of those people who works to defend our rights is my friend Representative Seth Bergley, who's our next speaker. Seth is one of the most active voices in the legislature standing up for our Second Amendment rights, and I'd like to have him just come up and speak about some of the work that's going on in that area.
How you guys doing? Well, first off, I'd just like to say it's an honor to serve this state, and it's an honor to be asked to speak here today. And I appreciate all of you guys making the trip. I know you guys are from all over the place. So I'm Seth Bergley. I represent House District 58, which is Carbon County, Joliet, Red Lodge, Belfry area in south central Montana. And like Bowen said, I have a background in firearms and shooting and through the military and competitive shooting. I grew up in Montana, and so kind of that led into a lot of firearms related legislation, and I have a lot of passion in that area. But today, in terms of what's been happening in the local media, it's been a debate. It's the national debate that's happening right now across the United States, and then what's been happening in Montana in terms of school walkouts and just the debate that's been happening. I don't feel like that the pro-gun, the pro-rights crowd has really been heard, so I want to talk to you guys a little bit about that today. So while the media has billed this and we have called this a march for guns, I think the reality is that it's a march for rights. Thomas Jefferson stated, "The laws that forbid the carrying of arms are laws such a nature that they disarm those who are neither inclined nor determined to commit crimes. Such laws make things worse for the assailed and better for the assailants. They serve rather to encourage rather than to prevent homicide. For an unarmed man may be attacked with greater confidence than an armed man." This is one of the men that drafted the Second Amendment. I think our goals in all of this rally, and we could probably all agree, is that we want to have an honest and respectful debate, but we want our voice to be heard in that debate. It's about education and about telling people our side of the story, because I don't think our side of the story has been heard or promoted as much as it should have been. So much of the recent debate has been centered around school walkouts and students saying that they don't feel safe. And this has, in many ways, formed the debate on the national and somewhat on the local scene. I would like to present the other side. Statistically, in 2017, there were 117 people killed in what are considered mass shootings in the entire country. So looking at the numbers of how many people have been killed, I think it's important to go back and to look at this issue and to judge it against other issues in society, since we are talking about limiting a constitutional right. There have been roughly 3 mass shootings a year for the past 5 years, and that's over 337,000 schools. So the idea of not feeling safe in a school or feeling like it's something that happens all the time, well, those are the numbers. To put it in perspective, in Montana, you have a 1 in 2 million chance of being killed in a school shooting. And since it's Montana and we all like to spend time outdoors, you have a 1 in 670,000 chance of being killed by a wild animal. To also put it in further perspective, 39 people a year are killed by domesticated dogs, which the argument that what do you need a gun for, can that be applied to other areas? I don't know. I don't state these statistics to lessen the severity of school shootings. That's really not my intent. I'm simply trying to add some perspective to this debate, and that if we're going to apply the criteria for the Second Amendment, it should be applied across other areas of our society. So it's been stated repeatedly, especially recently, that more guns equal more deaths. But multiple studies, including one that's done by NPR, showed that over the period from 1993 to 2010, gun-related homicides dropped 49%, while at the same time it was one of the highest instances and rises in gun sales in the last 50 years. The point that we're being hammered with is that if we can just eliminate guns, that shootings will stop, or that they will be dramatically reduced. But I ask you to consider France, who has some of the strictest gun laws in the world, and yet since 2015 have had 240 people killed in mass shootings. This includes an incident that happened yesterday where 3 people were killed. The idea that semi-automatic weapons, including AR style or AK style, if they were eliminated from society, it would eliminate mass shootings, does not hold true. In the Paris shooting alone, 130 people were killed with AK rifles, that are regulated in France beyond nearly every measure that has been proposed by the anti-gun lobby. The result that I see from this is not that school shootings would go down, it's that the people that own guns would no longer own guns to defend themselves, and the people that wanted to get guns would still be able to. Montana and the United States is a gun culture. You can look around. I guarantee you most of us grew up with a gun in our hand at a very young age. We lived for 12 years old when we could finally get to go hunting for real. And our entire society, looking around, was founded by the natives and then the mountain men who walked out of their comfort zones and made a living for themselves. I think Montana has a very long and proud heritage of standing up for ourselves and being independent. However, as important as hunting and heritage and culture is, it is not the basis for the Second Amendment. The basis for the Second Amendment is that it is a God-given right to self-defense. Sir George Tucker, on commenting on Blackstone's commentaries, The Laws of England, this is 1803, wrote, "This may be considered a true palladium of liberty. The right of self-defense is the first law of nature. In most governments, it has been the study of rulers to confine this right within the narrowest limits possible. Wherever standing armies are kept up, and the right of the people to keep and bear arms is under any color or pretext whatsoever prohibited, liberty, if not already annihilated, is on the brink of destruction." The ultimate reason for the Second Amendment is that governments have a history of tyranny. In the 20th century alone, governments are responsible from anywhere between 150 and over 200 million deaths of unarmed citizens. The largest would be the communist China and the Soviet gulags. The point that I keep hearing over and over as well is that, well, it's paranoia. This can't happen in America. Nobody wants to take your guns. So I ask you, what about Ohio and Illinois and California and Hawaii and Maryland and Florida and Connecticut and Maryland and New Jersey, among others who have all either introduced or have passed laws to ban or limit semi-automatic style weapons? So to kind of bring this back around, I'd like to talk a little bit about the legislation that I proposed last session. It was legislation deemed the School Safety Act, and it was to allow trained and competent school employees to conceal carry while at school. Unfortunately, the legislation did not make it through to be signed, and we will be bringing something similar this next session, I can assure you. The idea that disarming citizens is the path to school safety is a farce.
That's right. Yes.
You only have to consider the last two shootings that have happened to make, I think, a very good comparison. And I'd like to start this off with a voice that has not been heard in the national media, and that is of Parkland student Kay Korber. Said, "Had our SRO taken action immediately, the result could have been different. We might not have had to walk over the bodies of our classmates." Compare that with the situation in Maryland. And while there are differences, there is one fact that is indisputable. That shooting was ended by the actions of an armed security personnel. To my knowledge, there has never been a mass shooting in a school or anywhere else in the United States that has gone on to produce mass casualties after the shooter has been engaged by a gunman? I can't think of one. So the idea that arming somebody in a soft target, which is a school or a other building that are currently gun-free zones, doesn't work, hasn't even been tried. And in all the instances that I've been able to find, it's been successful. In closing, I would just like to read a quote by one of our favorite patriots, Patrick Henry. He said, "Are we at last brought to such humiliating and debasing degradation that we cannot be trusted with arms for our defense? Where is the difference between having our arms in possession and under our direction and having them under the management of Congress? If our defense be the real object of having those arms, in whose hands can they be trusted with more propriety or equal safety to us as in our own hands? These rights are granted by God and secured through our Constitution." Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Representative Burgley. That was awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Seth Burgley. Thank you. So folks, the national media are trying to tell us something. They're trying to tell us that all the young people of this country want to take our guns away, that all the young folks are anti-gun. And I just think this is an excellent opportunity to counteract that sentiment. So we're going to start with Joey Chester of the MSU College Republicans.
Go, Joey!
Well, first off, thank you guys for coming out and standing for your Second Amendment rights. So, my name is Joey Chester. I'm a student at Montana State University. I'm the secretary of College Republicans at MSU, and I am a candidate for House District 63 of the Montana State Legislature. But most importantly, I am a concerned Montanan gun owner. The school shooting in Florida was a tragic event, and my thoughts and prayers go out to them. Don't ever let anyone tell you that your thoughts and prayers don't matter. In wake of those events, we have seen an outcry of anti-Second Amendment young people. The media chooses to only cover them. It disgusts me. What they don't see are the mass amounts of young people who support the Second Amendment. The bias in the media today is disgustingly out of hand. The media has an agenda, and that is to forward the liberal anti-gun movement. You're not even being an accurate journalist if you're not covering both sides of the issues.
Fake news.
And that is why all of us are here today, to stand up. So I want to share a quick story with you. Recently, ASMSU, which is the student government at Montana State University, they proposed a resolution supporting a policy change and implementation of a centralized gun storage at the police station on campus at MSU. Right now, guns are stored in the residence halls at MSU without any issues. To me, this seemed like a blatant infringement on our Second Amendment. So, as college Republicans, we started a petition against this proposed resolution, and I am proud to say we received over 200 signatures from MSU students supporting their Second Amendment rights on campus. Folks, pro-Second Amendment students have been left out of this discussion. But I am here to say enough is enough, and we are going to stand up and ensure our Second Amendment rights are around for generations to come. It is crucial that our voices are heard. One of the great things about this country, other than our Second Amendment rights, are our First Amendment rights, which allow us to have thoughtful and intellectual discussions with people on both sides of political issues. The media and leftists seem to not realize this. Instead of talking to us, They would rather say that those of us who are members of the NRA are child murderers. That statement sickens me. As gun owners, think about what you use your guns for. They are tools. Here in Montana, they are a part of our lifestyle. We use them to hunt. We use them to protect our families. We use them to protect our property rights. The Second Amendment protects our individual liberty and all of our rights instilled to us in the Constitution. And I can guarantee not one of us here would ever use our guns in a harmful way. In fact, all of us here would be first in line to intervene in an active shooter situation. So I want to ask a question to those on the other side, and that is, what gives you the authority to think that you can take away my right to bear arms? Our rights to protect ourselves, families, and properties are God-given rights.
Amen.
So, a lot of people ask me, they say, Joey, since you support the Second Amendment, what can be done to reduce school shootings? Now, this is a completely valid question, and it's one that we all need to think about right now. First off, I want to say that new gun control measures are not the solutions here. We can look at cities like Chicago and Baltimore, which have some of the strictest gun laws in the country, yet they have some of the highest rates of gun violence. This is because, as you know, bad people don't listen to laws. So when we enact strict gun laws, guns get taken out of the hands of law-abiding citizens and put into the hands of those who seek to harm others. And there is no one there to stop them. So, the solution to reducing school shootings comes down to school safety. We need to take measures to protect our children when they are in school. That includes single entries into schools, bulletproof doors and glass, automatic locking doors, armed security guards, and honestly, folks, we need properly trained armed teachers in our schools. But I don't think this legislation needs to come from the federal level. It should be up to our state and local school districts. In Montana, local school boards have the authority to arm teachers. Custer County, Montana, chooses to arm its teachers. In a rural community like theirs, you never know how long it may take a police officer to respond. In addition, we need to make sure that our federal and local law enforcement agencies are doing their job to protect us so they don't fail their duties like they did in Florida. If you see something, say something to your local law enforcement agency or your school board. That's how we're going to stop further shootings. So, we also need to understand that this is a mental health issue. The cowards that keep committing these horrendous acts of violence are mentally ill, and they are the ones that shouldn't have guns. There needs to be a shift in focus to mental health care at this point in time. And allowing the CDC to research gun violence is now telling the American people that there is a gun problem, not a mental health problem. But we know that this is not the case. Think about who we protect with guns currently. We protect our government officials, our banks, and our borders with guns, but when it comes to our children, we leave them in these crazy things called gun-free zones. According to the Crime Prevention Research Center, gun-free zones have been the target of more than 98% of all mass shootings. This number is why these areas are often referred to as soft targets, meaning unprotected and vulnerable. We need to end gun-free zones. As a college student at a university that has a strong gun presence, I can tell you it makes me comfortable knowing that there are guns on my campus. In fact, I'm an advocate for campus carry so that we as students can protect ourselves and others on campus. And I know a lot of people on my campus who feel the same way, and there's some of them in the crowd here. I know there are young people across the state, and some of them are here because we know that gun control isn't the answer. Now, as I get ready to close, I want to point something out. The March for Our Lives is taking place not too far from here.
Let's go there.
That march... Oh, gosh. That march is them choosing to exercise their First Amendment right. And if something goes wrong, you know who the first people to show up are going to be? People with guns. And if something went wrong here today at our march, the first people to show up are going to be people with guns. That's right. The Second Amendment, again, is a God-given right.
Amen.
So, I'd like to read the right to bear arms for the Montana Constitution because I really love how it's written there. So it says, the right of any person to keep or bear arms in defense of his own home, person, and property, or in aid of the civil power when thereto legally summoned, shall not be in question, but nothing therein contained shall be held to permit the carrying of concealed weapons. I think that is just fantastic. So going forward, I ask you to continue to protect your home, your person, and property. Young people like me out there, I ask you to stand up and let your voices be heard. We have a unified effort here, folks. We will protect our God-given rights.
Amen.
So thank you. May God bless you. May God bless the United States, and may God bless the great state of Montana. Thank you.
Oh my word, how about that? We have some great young people in Montana. So in those lines, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to take a moment now for the young people of Montana who want to speak up on this issue. If you're a high school student or a college student, or not necessarily in college, but near that age, if you're a young person in Montana, younger than me, I want to let you know that the mic is open for you right now if you want to say a word or two about your Second Amendment rights. And I know my friend Nicole is interested in that line too, to get it started. So think about whether you'd like to say anything. Nicole, come on up here if you would.
Sure, I'm not young. It's my birthday today, and I can't think of any other place I'd rather be than here with you, standing for our Second Amendment rights. Thank you to every single one of you who has come out today to exercise your God-given, unalienable rights to assemble, to speak and express your views freely, to stand for religious and civil conviction, and to unite under the law and order that this great constitutional republic provides. No matter what side of this issue that you are on, it is important to have this conversation civilly and thoroughly. And for all you pro-gun control and anti-gun folks, all two of you here today, thank you for being here and participating in this process and in this conversation. But let me say one thing to you. You are not anti-gun. You are anti-gun for the common man. But you are pro-gun. You are more pro-gun than any of us standing here for the state. And that perspective destroys the balance of power in this great republic because it collectively destroys our common defense. It gives power to tyranny. Ask those in China. Ask those Jews who were slaughtered and systematically killed by Hitler and the Third Reich, by those in Cambodia in the 70s, by the millions who were systematically slaughtered after being disarmed. It is a pattern that proves itself over and over again in history, that when a government is given too much power, the people suffer and they have zero ability to defend themselves and their families. There is only one thing that keeps a growing government from dictating every aspect of our lives. There is only one thing standing between we the people and such tyranny, between a violent criminal bent on taking your life. There is only one thing that can still guarantee that the consent of the governed determines the direction of this country. This, my friends, is the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, period. This is not up for negotiation. No matter how many kids want to be forced out of their classrooms and marched, even kindergartners, marched onto the sidewalk when they should be in school learning about the Constitution and not being used as pawns for a liberal leftist agenda to strip our liberties. More often, these rights are being unhinged, and infringed by incremental regulation in many areas of our country, leaving good citizens vulnerable and defenseless and breeding more violent crime committed by those who could care less about law and order. When every law-abiding citizen in America legally acquires a firearm, they are fulfilling their duty to collectively sustain our common defense. Do you understand? Common defense. To collectively, by the millions, secure our God-given rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Firmly grasping onto our rights to keep and bear arms, we individually, preventatively protect and safeguard ourselves, our families, and our communities from life-threatening harm, domestic corruption, and our shores from invasion. Yes, this is still possible. Do you know why Japan did not invade our soil in World War II? Think about it. They, with cowardice, assaulted our naval fleet from the air because the Japanese general knew there is a rifle behind every blade of grass. And if we invade the United States of America, we will lose. Do you understand this concept, friends? They knew that we would courageously hold the line to the last drop of blood. The Founding Fathers did not need to foresee advances in weapon technology, okay, in order to properly write the Constitution. They wrote with dynamic intent to phrase the Bill of Rights with timeless application. They intended to state that no matter the advances in weapon efficiency or magazine capacity, that the common man and woman should, without infringement, be able to hold up the objectives in the preamble. To keep and bear arms would be the linchpin that holds all checks and balances of our republic in place, to form a more perfect union, to establish justice, to ensure domestic tranquility. Yes, you get peace when you're armed. To provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. To my children, I want my children to be safe, and this is common sense. Peace, safety, security, justice, unity, and just for perks, guys, you get to use those nifty firearms to hunt and bring home food to feed your little warriors. I am a woman of faith in God, a wife, a mother of 4 children. I'm a veteran. My husband served 20 years in the United States Marine Corps. Thank you. Semper Fi. Thank you to all of you out there who are public servants, our law enforcement, our first responders, our veterans, our active duty military, and every single citizen that participates in this beautiful process that we are here today for. I am also the chairman of our local Lewis and Clark County Young Republicans. I love this country. I want my children to grow up respecting and loving this country. We need every single voice here today to rise up and stand for liberty. I need the young folks here in Helena and in Lewis and Clark County to stand unwaveringly together to educate the upcoming generation that they don't have to ask permission to speak, to stand for what is right, to learn from raw, unfiltered history, to uphold and defend the Constitution, and to participate in the political process. We must continue to let the expansive powers in government know that they are hired by us. Their salaries are paid by us. Their power to rule comes from our consent, not their forced control. And our freedom lies in our inherent right to keep and bear arms. You better cheer for that one. It is the last line of defense that you and I have. When millions of citizens dare to own guns, it puts the fear in fascism and cries, "Don't you dare." We have a violent society, snowflakes. It isn't going away. Evil doesn't disappear because you pass some laws. In fact, it rallies harder. It rallies harder to overthrow the good. This has always been the pattern since the inception, since the creation of this earth. This is how we fight, folks. You need to register to vote. Do you understand me? You register to vote, and then you actually get out of bed and you vote. This is where we fight in the ballot box, in civil discourse, through education and respectful interaction with our neighbors. If you are between the ages of 18 and 40 years old, you can be a voting member of our chapter in Lewis and Clark County. If you are over 41 years old, you can be an associate non-voting member. We need your seasoned wisdom with the younger energy. We need everyone to come together and not have a divide in between so our collective voice can be heard to defend our rights, such as our Second Amendment. God bless this community where we are all raising our children, the majestic state of Montana, President Donald J. Trump, and the United States of America. Thank you.
That was amazing. I got to tell you, folks, I signed up for the best job. All I have to do is introduce the good stuff and then get out of the way. So do I have any more of the young folks in Montana who wanted to speak? I think I got a raised hand down here. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Josh O'Connor, and I'm 25, so I qualify as a young person, I guess. I'm a libertarian, and I came to this event because I'm absolutely for our Second Amendment rights. I'm also running in House District 69, and Representative Burgley over here, he talked about his bill that he had on the floor, and there were a few Republicans that voted against it, and that's one of the reasons it didn't make it. One of those Republicans is the guy I'm running against in House District 69. And I just wanted to say that as a young person in Montana, I'm absolutely standing for Second Amendment rights. I'm a proud gun owner. I'm a concealed carry holder. I carry at work. I carry on the way to work. There's a gun in my vehicle. And I'm a proud Second Amendment fan. So I just want to get up here as a young person and represent young people in Montana. Thank you.
Everybody can see you. What's up, Mike?
There you go.
Don't do it. I gotta eat it. Closer to your mouth. Come on. Super nervous. Crazy nervous. Here, I got it. It's okay, honey. Don't worry about it. You can do it.
Good job, bud.
Come on, Thomas.
Hi, I'm Thomas. The reason I love guns the way I do is because I love shooting.
Good job, Thomas.
Go, Thomas! I love learning. Oh, did.
Excuse me.
In fact, I can tell you the 3 rules of gun safety. Number 1, the gun is always loaded. Number 2, don't touch a gun without a parent's permission. I just want this to be over. Number 3, don't point a gun at something you're not going to shoot. Here are some other things I like to do with my gun. I like to walk in the woods and go target shooting with my dad. I like to clean my rifle, and I like the discipline it teaches me. Most of all, I love to shoot my dad's AK-47. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. God bless America and Montana.
Good afternoon, Montana. My name is Stone Philip Sutter. I live in Montana, Kyla, Montana. My mom and dad carry guns to protect us. When I grow up, I want to have a gun to defend myself.
Yes.
The Bible says we must protect our own lives. It has been said that freedom is only one generation away from extinction. Thank you, and may God bless the USA.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have Austin.
So I don't have a whole lot to say, but I would like to tell you a quick story about what happened at my school. I heard about this thing called a walkout. I was really confused, like, what is this? I did my research on it, and I didn't quite see a point in it. Because when I read about it, they said that they were memorializing these people that had died. And I didn't want to go out because that would mean I'd be a part of it. So I had my friend go out, who was already kind of a part of it, and I had him record it, and I did not like what I was hearing. At first, they started with, yes, memorializing. And then they started changing it to saying, well, what if we add restrictions on these guns? Why? What is this going to do, I said. So I did some research. I went up to people and asked them, do you know what you're talking about? They didn't. They said that they didn't know the difference between a semi-automatic and an automatic. You guys know what those differences, right? We know that semi-automatics can be much more deadly than automatics at times. And they said, what if we ban all these automatic weapons? Well, what is that going to help? That just means that we will have less room to protect ourselves. And so I said, well, what is the point in this? Give me a point. They said, well, what if we just ban all the guns? I'm like, what about the good people with guns? Like, no, there is no good people with guns. We'll just have the police do this. We'll have the police help us if something happens. Like, what do you think police are? They are good people with guns. They are there to protect us. Why can't we protect ourselves also? Because, I don't know. I keep hearing all these teachers saying stuff like, well, I don't want to be forced to have a gun in my school. If I have to have it, I will quit. They're not forcing you to. They're saying if you do have a gun in your school and you are trained enough to have a gun in your school, you can protect yourselves. So, I'm not super political, but I see this as it's our constitutional right. Why should they try taking it away from us when I just want to protect myself? Having a gun in my school makes me feel safe. Not having a gun in my school, because we have SRO officers, we know this. They are there to protect us, and I think teachers can have that too, acts of protection. So I just want to say that, thank you.
All right, and I think I've heard we have one more over on this side who wants to talk. Oh, we got two over on this side.
Hi, I'm Cribia. My sister and my cousin, my sister's 13 and my cousin's 10. They both have guns. My mom and my grandpa also have guns, and they've taught us to shoot guns properly. They don't teach us to point it at people. They don't teach us to shoot it at people. They tell us to shoot it downrange and not shoot people. I have learned that if you shoot people with the guns, it's not the gun's fault. It's your fault for shooting the gun. It's nobody else's fault. If you're the one who pulls the trigger, the gun doesn't shoot itself. There's no such thing as the gun shooting itself. I've also learned that guns, they're things that protect us. They don't try to harm us. They're there to protect us no matter what. Even if we try to blame the guns for shooting people. We can't take away our Second Amendment just because some dumb people are too scared and blame the guns that killed the kids. if you're too chicken and blame the guns that killed the kids, it's not the kids' fault. It's your fault and not the guns, no matter what. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Braxton Shewalter. I'm a senior from Columbia Falls High School. First thing I want to say is going back to the walkout. What?
You gotta get the mic a little closer to your mouth there.
Okay, is that good? Okay, so my name is Braxton Shewalter. I'm a senior from Columbia Falls High School. And the first thing I want to say is going back to the walkout that occurred last week at our school. I looked it up, what it, entailed, and it was sponsored by the Women's March, and that kind of threw me off right away. But, I noticed, that there was a, I knew, there was a memorial, for the victims, and I wanted to stay in school, but, I noted, that there was a memorial, but also what came with that was an attack on our Second Amendment. And, I thought, there's no way I'm going to participate in this. Then I thought about it. And I got about 60 students to take part in a memorial for the victims, but a pro-gun event too. And let's just say we got a lot of media attention, but they didn't air it. And I just, as a young NRA member, I just feel, that, the people down in, all the, what am I saying? What people have been saying, if you support, gun groups such as the NRA, or, any other group, or, you support the Second Amendment just in general, they're saying that, we're the reason, that these tragedies, school shootings are still happening. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, we're just advocates for the Second Amendment, we support the Second Amendment, and, we're responsible gun owners, and we're not the ones who are, going out there and shooting people, for the fun of it. And, the media, all they care about is, the students right now in DC or the students over there, a couple blocks from us, all they care about is their voices. They don't want ours heard, and I feel like that needs to be changed. And hopefully, maybe some of these guys here, actually air it, the media here, and, actually show that, and hopefully it makes it to CNN, Fox, CNN likely not, but I know we're clapping right now in pride, but the odds of it happening are still very slim, sadly enough. Last thing I want to say is just remember, if it wasn't for Donald J. Trump being president right now, and Hillary Clinton was, our Second Amendment right now would be gone.
Amen.
My name is Riley, and I love going to school, and I shouldn't feel scared of just being there. Like, we're supposed to be there to learn, not to be scared. It's like, I feel a lot safer if we had stuff to protect ourselves at the school. That way, if any shootings occurred, we'd actually have stuff to protect ourselves. I'd feel a lot safer. But if we didn't, and we stay like this, with all our guns taken away, we're just sitting ducks. We can't do anything about it. We should all feel safe at home and outdoors. So I think the Second Commitment is a good idea, and we should all support it. Thank you.
And there's just one more thing I want to, oops. I'm not sure we got it.
Check.
Yeah, it's up. Just won't come up. Okay. One more thing I just want to add to, going back to the walk that happened in my school. Us having a pro-gun, voice, what really sickens me is the fact that our school, I'm sure hundreds of other schools in the country did this as well, but not just the media that's silencing us, but the school itself is silencing our voices and being heard. My school took our posters away that said that we support the victims, but yet we also support guns. How sick is that? I honestly, it just, exactly. And, you know, yeah, that's, thank you.
So I think we have at least one more speaker, or I've got a couple more speakers on the agenda, but during the open mic period, I know Roy over here wants to say a word as well. And I think we're pushing the boundaries of young here, but that's all right. Let's get this going.
I'm young at heart, that's right. I'll be honest with you guys, you know, I'm not a gun owner, I'm not a member of the NRA. I came here today to understand. And I've had a chance the past couple of days here in Montana to talk to you fine people, and I think I understand. I think I understand. You know, this is the real march. This is the march that all the cameras should be at. Amen. This is the march that everybody should be talking about, but they aren't. And, you know, I've learned a lot. And I want to say, you know, I've learned today that, you know, guns make people safe. Which is why we didn't bring our guns today, because we understand that. And for me, I can't wait to take this message back down south to Alabama to all my people and my people that are in D.C. so that they can understand that it's about common sense, it's about having a sensible upbringing, it's about education. It's not about movies that have all these guns in them and they want to take guns out of movies. Come on, really? Movies? We can't? Anybody here ever watched an action movie and went home and wanted to rock 'em, sock 'em, and shoot up something? No. I went home, I watched the Fast and Furious. You know what? I'm still a safe driver. I went home, I watched Shape of Water. I don't want to date a fish. You people are amazing. Thank you all so much.
Now we got another addendum. Austin? One more.
I just want to say one more thing. So at my school, I just want to say something that really just made no sense to me. So you know how they at the schools they said if you do the walkout, we'll mark you absent in your periods. I had, and all of the PE teachers, they made us late to class, and so just so they could protect the kids that did do the walkout, so they didn't have to mark absent. Most teachers did this because I go to Capitol High School. A lot of the teachers, they were late to class just so they didn't have to mark the kids absent. And then when some kids started to say, what if we do our own walkout for our guns? They said they will try to suspend us. So they said that they'd give these kids absence, but they didn't. But if we tried to write for our guns, or like write for our own guns outside of school, we can be suspended. I don't see a right in this. I just wanted to say this. It's something that I forgot to say, but I really just, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin, and thank you all of the young folks who came up to speak. That was amazing and motivational. Thank you. So we've got 3 more speakers on the agenda, and then we've got a whole ton of pizza and donuts for you here. But first, my friend Mark Wicks, who's running for the Public Service Commission, is up next.
I am so glad to be here with my fellow caretakers. And yes, I called you caretakers because you take the responsibility to take care of yourself and those around you. You take care of the people that can't defend themselves, and that is so important. The media would have America think that gun owners do not care about others, but in fact, the truth is the complete opposite. Many of us openly cried when we see school shootings. We would be the first to run into a building if we thought we could save one life. We are the caretakers. As a caretaker, our most important job is protecting those around us. Our most basic right, the basic right, is the right of self-defense. We have no other rights if we can't defend ourselves.
That's right.
It doesn't matter what you have. If you can't defend yourself, it can be taken away. I am not here to talk about the Second Amendment because I believe that the right to self-defense is a God-given right that no government can ever take away. It is not a right that 9 judges in Washington, D.C. can overturn. It is not a right that Congress can take away from us. It is our fundamental right as human beings to defend ourselves. The right of self-defense must be upheld as the cornerstone of our civilization. Nothing I have ever read or seen tells me that humanity has fundamentally changed since the dawn of time. There are those that follow the law, like us, and those that will not, and those that will manipulate the laws to gain power and money. Human history is full of examples of those in power abusing the people they swore to protect. We should not have to make the same mistakes over and over to learn from them. We can look at the over 200 million people killed by their own governments in the last century to understand that we are no more than cattle to those in power. I do not feel the need to live through a purge, a genocide, ethnic cleansing, a Tiananmen Square, or any other mass slaughter to understand what the Jews mean when they say, never again. They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I don't doubt it one bit. The Gun-Free Zone Act of 1990 was passed with good intentions by most, but I don't believe that those that truly understood the implications of the bill had good intentions. They had to know that children would die because they were left undefended. They had to know that. How naive do you have to be to think that a sign that says gun-free zone protects anyone? No matter what their intentions were, this is the result. Our children are corralled in gun-free zones where monsters can kill without fear of retaliation. They have been herded into kill zones for political correctness. The unintended consequences of this law has left us with a generation of students that did not learn firearm safety and have no familiarity with firearms. They have been taught an irrational fear of weapons, and it's no surprise that they are marching for change. Let us imagine that every firearm in the world magically disappeared. Would we be safe from violence? No. We only have to look at a prison to see how society works without weapons. The strong prey on the weak. The weak try to survive in any way they can. In fact, if it is absolute safety that you crave, solitary confinement is the only solution I can think of where you can be safe from violence. We have to understand that if every firearm was destroyed, the most dangerous weapon the world has ever seen would still be everywhere. Because the most dangerous weapon in existence is the human mind. There is nothing deadlier than a human that has decided to do violence. They will find a way. We can't stop them by just passing laws. We have seen it over and over. Knives, trucks, cars, fertilizer and diesel. It doesn't matter. Monsters will find a way to kill. The only thing that has and will work to stop them is a good guy with a gun.
Amen.
We just proved that in Maryland this week, when Deputy Blaine Gaskill stopped a would-be mass murderer before his attack can be completed. He deserves our thanks. Gun grabbers argue that if some of the classes of firearms were outlawed, then attacks would not be as bad, and they hold the Australian gun ban as an example of how there's not been a mass shooting since it was enacted. But life in Australia without the right to defend yourself is not as nice as you'd think. Let me tell you the real consequences. My nephew lives in Australia. He's a strong young man. He can ride 40, 50 miles on his mountain bike. Doesn't bother him a bit. One sunny afternoon a couple years back, he was riding past a park and some young men started calling him names. And he's not the type of person that takes being called names. So he stopped and confronted him. The teenagers decided to teach the Yank a lesson and swarmed him. They knocked him off his bicycle, beating him to the ground. 8 teenagers took turns attacking him. One of them got creative and pulled the chain off his bike and whipped his head and face with it. Across the street, defenseless homeowners watched in horror as the young man was beaten senseless. Finally, he was left in a pool of blood, comatose, and one eye destroyed from the bicycle chain. The story doesn't stop there, though. You see, he did recover. He got out of the hospital, and as he's walking through his neighborhood, one of the fathers of the young men that attacked him started screaming and chasing him, threatening to kill him because his child was now in jail. All he could do was run to his home, barricade himself behind the door, and call the police as the man tried to beat the door in and attack him once again. But because he had no way to defend himself, he had to wait for somebody to come save him. He was lucky that time. This is what life in a country where you're not allowed to protect yourself from criminals looks like. Living here in Montana, we don't often stop and think about why it's safe to walk down almost any street. Home invasions are almost non-existent. That's because we have the right to practice self-defense. Those of you that refuse to protect yourselves or your families, cash in on the dividends that our preparedness as gun owners has generated. So, when people start talking about banning firearms for the safety of the children, I get mad. Because I know the safety of the children is endangered by short-sighted ideas. You see, we've read the playbook of the gun grabbers. It starts with semi-automatic firearms, then we lose our handguns. Then our scoped rifles that somehow magically become sniper rifles. In the end, we will end up with single-shot rifles locked securely in a safe. Well, we were told, see, we told you we wouldn't take away the Second Amendment. You still have your guns. Newsflash, we are not going to play your game. We will keep the weapons we have and protect our families, and you too. Even if you don't want us to protect you, we will. We will keep the weapons that will protect us from whatever danger comes along. Our rights entitle us to self-defense, and that means we need weapons that are the equivalent to the greatest threat we may meet.
That's right.
That means we will keep our semi-auto firearms. We will keep our high-cap mags. We will keep our pistols. And we will not play your silly game, because if you win, Only sad notations in a history book from another generation will be left. And they will be left repeating, never again, never again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was great. So we have two more speakers left, and the first one is Randy Pinocci, who's also running for Public Service Commission and is going to speak on behalf of the Montana Shooting Sports Association, too.
Okay, I was Conrad Burns, the statewide director. I personally worked with Charlton Heston. I was Conrad Burns' gun guy, Reberg's gun guy, Judy Martz's gun guy, and I've served on the board of directors of Montana Shooting Sports Association for about 15 years. Montana Shooting Sports Association passes pro-gun law for the state of Montana. That's important for you to be involved with that because that's where the rubber meets the road. Not all states are equal. Hawaii, California are among the most anti-gun states in the United States. Montana is among the most pro-gun. That is because Montana Shooting Sports Association has passed 68 pro-gun bills so far. Gary Marbett is the president. The man is a legend. It is the most successful gun organization in the history of the United States. No gun group anywhere in the United States has passed 68 pro-gun bills. We're the ones that came out with the School Safety Act. I served with Seth Bergley, and we're both A-plus representatives. To be A-plus means that you're going to introduce pro-gun bill. Now you guys are A-rated, and I'm going to tell you how each one of you could be A-plus. I need you to come in and testify on these bills. I need you to show up. If I had a crowd like this, we would have passed the School Safety Act, House Bill 385, which didn't pass. How many of you'd like to know the Republicans who didn't vote for it? Okay, Annie Bukacek here has a list of the Republicans who did not vote for it. Take a picture with your cell phone. Now, I want to encourage you to understand that it's up to you to get your legislators to make sure they're voting pro-gun, supporting the bills you want. We've seen where the teacher stands between the shooter and the student, and they'll lose their life to save that student. Wouldn't it be great if they had the choice to have a gun, if they were trained, they had the proper training and chose to do so? Of course. It's a bill that just has common sense. Now I'm going to tell you a little history about Montana Shooting Sports Association. We're the ones that fought for you to have a concealed carry. How many people have a concealed carry here? Well, I'll tell you what, the membership brochures to join MSSA are right here, and you wouldn't have that right if we didn't pass it. And it wasn't easy. There was a group that testified against the concealed carry permit. And here's what they said. Pinocci, if we pass this, Montanans will kill each other over a parking space. That is what was said in testimony. There will be dead people on the street. You want to take a guess what group said that? Anyone? Montana Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, the #1 anti-gun group in Montana. They testify against almost all the gun bills. Here's something you're going to take home with you. There are over 35,000 concealed carry permittees in Montana. Not one has committed a felony. Check with the FBI, check with your sheriff's department, not one. There's roughly 900 law enforcement in Montana. You ought to check out how many of them committed a felony. You'd be surprised. The 35,000 concealed carry permittees are outperforming the 900 law enforcement officers. I want you to know you should be very proud of that. Another bill we passed, self-defense bill, so you have the right to protect yourself in your home. Just a few years ago, you would probably get prosecuted if you had to take someone's life to protect yourself in your home. Now we have changed that around to where you're going to have to testify, you're going to have to explain yourself, but there's a good chance you won't be incarcerated for protecting your family. Now that bill was probably the most important bill passed in Montana's history. The Montana Shooting Sports Association deserves your your attention. You need to come in and testify on these bills. I promise you, if I had this group to testify on the School Safety Act, we'd have passed it. That's how powerful you guys can be. And that's how you can become an A to an A+. Come testify on these bills. As a member, we're able to get you updated on what bills that we're trying to get through the legislation. We'll organize you when to come in and testify, and come make that difference. All right, now, I encourage you to look at this list. I noticed one of the representatives that voted against the School Safety Act in the crowd today. It's your responsibility to get with those representatives and encourage them to understand why you think it's important. After all, they're supposed to represent you. There's no excuse that bill shouldn't have passed. No excuse. Okay? All right, so thank you. It was an honor to be here today. Any questions, please get with me and get a brochure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, this is going great. And you know, I just had something pointed out to me that I want to make sure some of the young folks in our audience hear about. When people talk about the NRA, one of the things they don't do is one of the things they don't realize the NRA does is that they provide grants to schools and school clubs and things like that for gun safety programs. So folks should be aware of that if you're one of our high school students or college students here. Now our next speaker is Pastor Steve Wagner. Is that right, Steve? Pastor Wagner, thank you very much.
Well, what a crowd. Glad you're all here. And, well, we've heard some great things from some great speakers. And almost every single paragraph that was spoken had something to do with our rights to our life, our liberty, and our property. Well, one of the things I want to bring up, and I'll get to it, is the language that we use and the words that we use. We've got to be more careful of how we use words, because words express ideas, and ideas have consequences. And sometimes we can lead ourselves into the dark by the words that we use. We can actually enslave our words. This lady here in front, the Second Amendment did not give us the right, or I'm not allowed something by the Second Amendment or any other amendment. That is so true. How often do we hear that? Well, the Second Amendment. This amendment allows me to do this. This amendment allows me to do that. No, it doesn't. They are inalienable rights that we have by virtue of being a human being. And they're granted by God, and they're not up for debate or discussion in my view. My rights, my liberties, my property, and that of the people I love are not up for debate. So you guys go pound sand but want to talk about it, you can talk about it all day long. But it will not change the way I live. It won't change the number of rights that God has given me, you, or anyone else. Okay? Now, my speech. Thank you. Well, let me find page 1. I thought that was page 1, but I guess it's not. All right, let me see. All right, I'm going to stay on track from here on out. Okay. Who here has ever watched the movie called The Matrix? Yeah. Do we have anybody here that has taken the red pill? Probably almost everybody, huh? Do you remember that moment that you were jarred out of your slumber? How many had a being jarred out of my slumber moment sometime in their past? They were either sound asleep or maybe even part of the government has to regulate us all to death crowd at one point. Something happened, jarred us out of our slumber. These seem to be remarkable events, and no matter how long ago that they happened to us, the time that's passed is not diminished that significance, but we've blossomed into a creature who wants to read and study and learn about the subject of liberty. And I got a feeling that's most, if not everybody here today. Well, God, who is the giver of life, is the giver of liberty as well.
Amen.
Many of us have experienced this red pill moment, this paradigm shift. And one of the things that's most difficult for us to understand is how we can communicate with all those other people that seem to be oblivious still. Well, just think about how hard it was for others, red pill people, to communicate with you before you took the pill. So we need to be patient, and we need to love our neighbor. We know that life and liberty cannot be sustained without also the inalienable right to property and the inalienable right to defend our lives, our liberties, and our property. We know that an attack on one of our inalienable rights is an attack upon all the others as well. The Second Amendment, of course, many of you know, has been called liberty's teeth, and for a good reason. I hope that you all are here today because you understand that this is not just about guns. This is way bigger than guns. There is an eternal struggle between the ideas that produce happiness, beauty, human freedom, and liberty. And there's those other ideas, a whole group of other ideas that dehumanize us, that produce misery, tyranny, death, and destruction. Just prior to the American colonists' Declaration of Independence, in his famous "Give me liberty or give me death" speech, Patrick Henry declared this: "For my part, whatever anguish of spirit it may cost, I am willing to know the whole truth and know the worst and to provide for it." I wonder, can we say that? Is that our desire? It should be, because we are in a mess. I think everybody here knows that we're kind of in a mess from where we started from. Ladies and gentlemen, the gun issue, the Second Amendment, however important that all is, it's not an isolated topic made for the gun enthusiast only. It's an integral part of what it means to be free men and free women. And I ask you, are you willing to know the whole truth of who we are, what we ought to be, and how we got in the mess that we're in now? Well, I want to just hit the high points of the whole truth. And time doesn't allow to even get into many details. But certain powerful ideas have been undermining the concepts of liberty and have been making war on our lives from before any of us here today were even born, and even since our parents were born. We have been steadily losing ground. We have been educated and trained to shun personal responsibility, thus bargaining away our freedom one small piece at a time. We've been trained to think, and we've been trained to think little and care even less. If we give up a little bit here, a little bit there, a little more, a little more. And it's usually in exchange for a bargain, to bargain a benefit or a convenience. This has just become modern American life. We've come to a place where we have very little say over our lives, and our property rights are nearly gone. Freedom is alive, but I'm sad to say, and I'm concerned that it may be alive only in our minds and in our collective cultural memory. To expect a wide-scale renaissance of freedom anytime soon is to deny the reality of what is right in front of us. And because it's right in front of us and it's just a part of who we are, it's very difficult to see. So I want to just throw some things out here. We've been overcome in a war that most of us for many, many years, and most people around us don't even know has been going on. It's been a war that's been going on for centuries. It's a war of ideas. And occasionally it breaks out into the open with some sort of a clash. But regardless of who thought they won that little scrimmage, the war is not over. It's not over because the ideas that animated both sides are still very much alive, and none of them have been vanquished forever. And the war is between those who seek and serve the truth and those who are content with living lies and serving lies. It's been said that men will be ruled by God or by tyrants. Well, what we mean is there is a higher transcendent law that all men must live by, or we're mere subjects of the biggest bully in the sandbox. Those are the only two places to be. We live according to the higher transcendent law that applies to all of us, and that's the basis of our laws. We've heard a lot about Congress and the legislature. Thank you, fellow other legislators that are here. But we don't talk too much about the transcendent law, the law of nature and of nature's God that our founders said. So we either live by that law, or we live by the law that's promulgated by the biggest bully in the sandbox, and we just, get along as a subject. There's nothing in between. Well, I'm glad you're all still here. I told Brent that he should put me last because where I'm going to go next, some of you might leave. I'm kind of glad this is a gun-free zone, actually, at this point. Maybe not. Maybe not. Think about all we've learned as Americans just in the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years about life and liberty. Think of all we've discovered about the corruption, the depth and the width of the corruption, especially in the federal government, but it's not limited there. It flows downstream, and much of it's in our own states. Okay? Well, do you think we've heard the worst of it? Think we've seen the worst of it? I don't think so. I don't think so. We have an American school system, and a lot of the reason why we're here is because of the school shootings and stuff. But there's a bigger problem than that. We need to get to know the major players and the philosophies that have directed the course and actually established the modern American school. We need to study to understand how the good news of Jesus went from a powerful message of the liberation of mankind to some cheap, escapist idea that the world is run by Satan, and the best that we can hope for is some utopian better place when we die. Well, that works real good for the people that want to run the show here on earth, because they got us all sitting on the sidelines thinking this is all the better it's going to get, and we have to just deal with their stupidity and foolishness. Well, that's not what Jesus is all about. I hate to bring that up maybe, but you can talk to me later and I'll tell you more about that. Both the schools and the churches have been led in producing this socialist disaster that we call America today.
Amen.
It is quite unreasonable to demand adherence and respect for a Bill of Rights that is grounded on the objective truths of the living God, and then send our children to the institutions that were established for the very purposes of destroying such ideas. Is it any wonder that we have thousands and thousands, 10,000s, who knows, millions of people among us today who are socialists? If you're not familiar with the works of the men of the Frankfurt School and their long march through the institutions, the works of Antonio Gramsci, whose prison's notebooks are, everybody's known about. What's the book that Obama read? Everybody knows about Saul Alinsky, but he's just standing on the shoulders of these men. Do you know who Edward Bernays was and his work with public relations and propaganda? We are living in a sewer that these people have created, and we breathe it and we eat it almost on a daily basis, and we don't realize it. We need to learn about these things and deal with it. I would suggest to you that we may debate the actual number of America's youths that are corrupted with anti-American, anti-Christ, and socialist ideologies, but the popularity of actors such as Bernie Sanders and Barack Obama, to name a couple, is certainly a good indicator of not only the moral corruption of our current generations, that means us too, but the breathtaking successes of the men who I just mentioned. This, ladies and gentlemen, is bigger than guns. Rights are not taken away. Generally, they're surrendered. And we've been taught to surrender at almost every turn. Well, we could go on, and I won't. But finally, if I haven't depressed you enough already, I have good news at the end, trust me. Like Patrick Henry, we need to be willing to know the whole truth and to know the worst and make provisions for it or to provide for it. And one last piece of bad news. The enemies of freedom have convinced us, or convinced many of our fellow citizens, that they will ultimately prevail. Well, I have news for you and news for them. They won't.
That's right.
Just because we're subjected to deafening streams of lies and propaganda, we're pummeled with anything that serves the purposes of the Marxist enemies of freedom. The stuff is drummed into us constantly, while any and all opposition is minimized, ignored, belittled, and publicly mocked. That doesn't mean that they win.
That's right.
That's right. We're not buying it, and we don't have to buy it.
That's right. Yeah.
This behavior is all part and parcel of the battle for the minds and hearts of men. And I mean ladies too, but that gets too burdensome. You know what I mean, ladies. All right. Friends, our primary task is not first to win over the wrong side of the gun issue, folks. Our primary task is to deprive the enemy of the ownership of our minds, our hearts, and our souls, and those of our children and those that we love. And the only way to accomplish this is to immerse ourselves and our children in the truth. We need to wallow in the Word of God. Amen? We need to learn truth from His Word and from His works that are evident and all around us. We need to inoculate ourselves and our family against ignorance and stupidity by encouraging critical thinking. We need to teach our young to analyze data instead of joining in the hyper-emotionalized, hyper-sensationalized, reactionary herd. My friends, we must reject government schooling. We certainly can start with rejecting federal intrusion in our states, but to do that we have to get responsible and we have to get off the dole. We get more federal money than almost any state in America per capita, okay? So take your children home, work with them and other families, and work to seek and serve what is true. Find or start a local church. I won't get into the churches. The churches are as bad as the schools, okay? And you got that from a local pastor, okay? Find a local church, and that desires truth. Find other believers, other good men and women, and maybe they aren't the same professing doctrines that you do, but they love life, they love liberty, they love what's true, and they're willing to grow and learn and protect themselves, their families, and one another. Find people, if they're in churches, fine, that want to have truth more than the protection and the benefits of the state. I'll wrap up with this. Paul Rosenberg, writing in the Freeman's Perspective of August of 2015, in an article entitled, "It's 460 AD Rome, This Won't Be Fixed," describes our situation with painful precision. This system will not be fixed, and I'm talking mostly of the Washington federal nationalized government that we have. There was a lot of talk about state legislature, state response and stuff, which is what we need. but this system won't be fixed. The rulers, our rulers, in Washington, D.C., as in Rome, are liars, they're mad, and they're drunks, and nowadays they're drugged, and God only knows what else. Rome was full of well-meaning people trying to reform and save it. And by the way, among those were the Goths. But they tried hard to keep Rome operational, but even they failed. Once ruling hierarchies get beyond a certain point, they cannot be reformed. And I am sure that the modern West is beyond that point. This system will never allow itself to be seriously reformed. Trying to fix it is like trying to revive a long dead corpse. It's fully corrupt from top to bottom, and I don't think there's any good guys waiting in the wings to save it when the time is right. Folks, this is bigger than guns. But as long as the image of God is in man, the spark of freedom is there also. Amen.